All right. Welcome everybody to the very first Marvel vs. Podcast. I'm still workshopping the name, but hopefully y'all like it. This podcast is essentially to introduce y'all to pretty much, I guess you could say, the life story of Marvel vs. Capcom X, and pretty much the pretty much details from the beginning of how the development was. So, and each podcast is going to tackle different aspects of like design elements for the game. So it will be some for characters, it'll be some for the tag system, which is what we're discussing today, and it'll be some for like system mechanics like combos and all that good stuff. So, if you guys like what you're seeing and what you're hearing, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps me do more stuff like this and obviously talk about things that I'm interested in and I enjoy. And yeah, let's get to it. I am joined today by my co-host. You may or may not know him, but he is one of the sickest Mugen creators I've ever fucking met, and it's Space 23, aka Dark Cypher Lucius, and he's going to be here today also talking about the tag systems. And yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself, bro.
What is up, everyone? I'm a little under the weather today. I sound a little weird. Just bear with me. I am Space 23, also known as Dark Cypher Lucius. That was my old name. And I used to do a lot of Marvel vs. Capcom style characters, and I still do to this day. A long time ago, I'm talking over 10 years ago, maybe when I was like around 15 years old, is when I started Mugen. And then after a few years of that, I took quite a long hiatus, and not long around the middle of 2021, I returned with I want to say, a vengeance, and started making Mugen content again. And I also have my own project as well. It's called Marvel vs. Capcom Eternity of Heroes. It is a remake of the original Eternity of Heroes by Infinity Mugen Team. But we'll talk about that some other time. Right now we're talking about the tag system in Marvel vs. Capcom X. I'm the one that designed this new tag that's going to be used for this game and also for my project as well.
All right. So I have an outline here. We're obviously going to be tackling this one at a time. So right now we're going to be talking about the inspiration. What inspired me to tackle Marvel vs. Capcom X in general, right? So generally, I am a big fan of Marvel vs. Capcom, like in general. Pretty much just said that, but it's whatever. I really, really enjoy MVCI. Like that's something that a lot of people may or may not know, and if you've seen my content on my main channel, you would probably know I am an MVCI lover. Um, I think MVCI's tag system is probably one of the most well designed tag systems in any fighting game. It's not perfect, but it's relatively well designed, like inherently. So there's that. There's also the fact that before MVCI, I obviously played a lot of Ultimate Marvel 3. And Ultimate Marvel 3's tag system, while it is good, it's really traditional. It essentially adds on to what MVC2 did. It pretty much like enhances it and cleans it up a bit, because MVC2's tag system is good, but mostly revolved around a lot of assist usage. Not to say that Marvel 3 doesn't, but it was very apparent in Marvel 2. In Marvel 2, there were certain assists that weren't really as used because, most assists that were used were like drones and anti-air assists, and all that stuff. In the game as scrambly as Marvel 2, anti-air assists are very well favored, whereas in Marvel 3, they weren't used that much. So, but yeah, like generally the inspiration for MVCX in general is MVCI, but especially so with like the tag system. So I wanted to try to, add as much MVCI isms as possible while also harkening back to what made the MVC series great in general.
Right. And speaking of the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 tag, it is indeed very, very traditional. It was one of the most classic tags you'll know. Um, it did have a newer feature that the very first games didn't have, such as delayed hyper combos. The thing is, The tag in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was primarily to help you start a combo. To be honest, it's very difficult to start a combo with any character. You're kind of limited to what you can do, especially after certain aerial combo knockdowns. And whenever that happens, you can't do a relaunch combo, for example. So you'll have to find workarounds in that tag to make it work. Now, a lot of characters they were not that well made. You can see that top tier characters, god tier characters, whatever you want to call them, Magneto, Storm, Psylocke, Sentinel. Those are the most overused characters in that game.
Don't
But
forget Cable.
they, oh exactly, and Cable too. Don't forget Cable. Yeah. Um, they work so well together because they start a combo from almost anything, and especially from their own assists. So that's that's what made them really really good. Besides them being extremely fast.
Yeah, and in Marvel 3, there's actually a very decent amount of like solid assists. This is that's where Marvel 3 essentially kind of turned the whole like MVC2 assist system on its head, because now it's like anti-air assists weren't as favored outside of probably Jam Session. Jam Session is quite literally the Captain Corridor of like like MVC3. It was if you wanted an anti-air assist, you were using either Jam Session or nothing. Honestly, there's no other
Right,
reason not to use Jam Session.
right. And MVC3 they completely overhauled tag. To be honest, in my personal opinion, actually. Um, because they wanted you to use those assists in a way that lets you extend your combo. That's what the early days of Marvel 3 was about. You would start a combo, get the OTG with an assist or something, anything to help you extend your combo. Almost every assist had a use except for very very few, which I can't really name them off the top of my head because there was also meter building assists, which were kind of strange, but they had their uses as well. But the primary reason for the change in the assists was to help you extend your combo. And in Marvel 3, combos were long. I'm talking really long. I'm talking like like hours long combos. You can probably do an infinite combo for sure now because they do have the Team Aerial combo infinites.
Yeah, and speaking of Team Aerial combos was another new addition, and like it technically was a new addition in TVC, but it was really like fleshed out in Marvel 3 a lot more, because in TVC it was obviously a lot more limited, especially since I don't think Team Aerial counter was in that game before. So I know.
It was not. It was that area Team Aerial counter was introduced in Marvel 3.
Yeah, that's what I
TVC
thought.
was TVC was the first Tatsunoko versus Capcom. That was the first that did the whole Team Aerial combo, but they called it what was it called? I think it was Team Aerial Raid or I'm not sure what it was called.
Yeah, I don't
It
remember
probably was
either.
called. It probably was called the same thing. I just don't remember.
Yeah, so obviously, like with MVCX, there was a lot of inspiration taken from the previous games, but in Mugen, there just at the time there wasn't really a lot to work with when it came to like tag systems, like at all. But it was still like an interesting thought process of like how could I emulate what I take inspiration from with what little resources there are. So like that was the goal, which is what we're getting into. The goal was to inspire the same amount of creativity that you could have in Marvel 3 and MVCI, especially MVCI. But granted, my knowledge of Mugen at the time when I started, it was limited. It was very limited. Most people somewhat forget is that MVCX started as a compilation. It wasn't even like a full game. It was like a compilation. It was just a hodgepodge of characters that I just edited and just threw in there, for the sake of it. So obviously I wanted to try to channel a lot of MVCI and Marvel 3 into the games, but the problem is I just did not have the knowledge in order to do it, but at the time I just wanted to have a fun game with a decent tag system, I guess you could say, and that's where Uno Tag comes in. Now, Uno Tag was the very first tag system that I used for Marvel vs. Capcom X, and it's very like when it was just born, like it was just born. But at that time, you might as well call it a stillborn because Uno Tag was kind of just it was rough, but like yeah, like it was so bad that certain characters wouldn't even work like at all in the game whatsoever. They wouldn't even work if you had them coded to Uno Tag. It was that problematic. So,
Um,
considering the fact that I was really limited in knowledge at the time for all the characters that I was working on when I was working on the game, I felt like I was just out of options at that time. So, you're more of a Mugen expert than I am. So, give me your thoughts on Uno Tag and all of its flaws.
from what I know, is Uno Tag is a universal tag code that can be applied to any character. At the time, that was considered the best tag code you can get because in the old Mugen days, I'm talking about Win Mugen, um, you couldn't control the partner character, and you'd have to use a hack called Mugen Night AI. It was just a simple executable that disables the AI for your partner, and then you can use Uno Tag that way. It was from the code that I saw. It was pretty rough. I'm talking maybe it was the most. How can I put this in a nice way? It was the most spaghettified code I've seen from almost any other code. There's been a lot of characters that were just got thrown a bunch of code, and if it worked, it worked, and it was kind of hard to reverse engineer that code so I can get a better understanding of it because I did plan to use it myself. And the thing is, if I didn't understand the code after a couple of days, I would just give up on it and make my own, and that's what I did.
Yeah, Uno Tag because Uno Tag was just so it was just so messy. I'm not gonna lie. Like the essentially, I guess you could say the installer. Like when you boot up Uno Tag, right? When you booted it up, it was actually like a relatively simple interface. Like it gave you the option to code or like add what move that you wanted your assist to be, whether they were close or whether they were far. What the Uno Tag did was it gave characters two assists and it gave characters, I guess you could say active switch and all that stuff, like a crappier version of active switch, and their assist would change depending on the opponent's positioning. So, but generally, it was still like a relatively rough tag system. Like if you look into the fundamental aspects of it, like on the surface level, it doesn't seem that bad, but for it to be so problematic and be very specific in what characters work with it really caused a lot of problems in development for me. So I it got to the point to where when I first released the very first build of it, people were like, "Yo, this game is broken," and not in a good way. It was busted. Like this game is busted. Like, and it was almost absurd how busted it was. So I was like, at that point, I need to move on. I can't work with this Uno Tag again. This was my thought process at the time. So
You're talking busted as if it didn't work at all, right?
yeah, mostly like Wesker was broken, Magneto just didn't work, Spider Man just barely functioned. Like it was a problem when I first started out. I'm not even kidding. Like people see it now, but you should have been there back then when it was barely a game. Like
Right.
so, but yeah, like as I got a little bit more in tune with coding, a little bit more slowly but steady, um, I eventually swapped over tag systems, and this is where I got into Add 004. Add 004 is essentially like a somewhat more complicated version of Uno Tag, except that it doesn't seem nearly as problematic. It just seems like a little bit overly complicated. Like with Add 004, the method of adding the code to the characters is a little bit more complicated, but at the same time, it presents less issues. But that doesn't mean it's without its issues. So Like, and this was when I was going to a dumb little rebrand, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom X. I bet nobody remembers that, but that's pretty much what I was doing, and it went about as well as you would expect it to. Um, I was actually, and at that time, I was actually working on new characters, like actual characters that I worked on. So instead of editing characters, I actually started like, okay, let me try to learn how to convert characters to a template and then add it into the game. Like I was actually working on a 6 button version of Virgil at that time. That never came out. So, um, but Ad 004 was the tax system I was going to use. It wasn't perfect, but it got the job done. It did a better job than Uno tag, I would probably say. There just was no super tag, which was another aspect of MVC I wanted to channel at that time. Looking back at it, it's not a great idea, but it was something I wanted to do. So, what would you say about Uno? Not Uno tag, as 004. What would you say about that?
I will say that I never used it. It's not because it was complicated, but because it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Uh, at all four felt more of like a King of Fighters style type of tag. You
Right,
know, I don't remember what the last game was of King of Fighters that had tag. Maybe it didn't, and I'm just crazy or something. But no, it didn't. It didn't work the way I wanted it to, which is the biggest reason why I didn't use it. Not only that, it took advantage of well, it didn't take advantage. It spawned so many helpers in Mugen, or
right.
and it used up too many resources. I think I've seen it spawn like 12 helpers, and I said, okay, no, I can't do that. I cannot do that. I'm trying to save resources here. Unfortunately, Mugen is limited to a total of 56 helpers, and that's across all the characters. So they share that limit. It's not a limit for each character. Uh,
Hmm.
and so when I found that out, I said, I think it's best if I make my own tag then, and that's for sure when I started making it. Um, Granted, I could have waited and learned Eichmann, but at the time, I just didn't care about Eichmann. I still don't really care about it because I have to learn something completely new. I'm pretty sure you can use standard CNS code, but working with Eichmann has been a nightmare for me, and it constantly crashes for me, and then there's always new updates. So I'm waiting for possibly a version that will work no matter what I do to make it crash. But I'm pretty sure that's just a pipe dream. It's always going to crash, and uh, and I won't get the benefits of Eichmann. I know Eichmann has amazing benefits, but I care more about just making the game work. And so far, this new tag code that I made has been working really well. Not to say that Adol 4 is it. Not bad.
Oh,
Not to say
good.
that. Damn.
Take your
Okay,
time.
that's quite good.
Take your time.
All right, that's what I was afraid of. Not to say that Adol 4 is a bad tag code. It's actually really cool. It takes advantage of the common states and just completely overhauls everything. And it has its own custom life bars, everything. So I got inspiration from that, and I made my own custom life bars as well. So it's a great tag code. It's just a little, could be a little confusing to add, to be honest.
Yeah, and that was like a struggle that I generally faced when it came to Ad 004. And it was getting to a point to where I just felt that MVCX wasn't going in the direction that I thought it would. So I was just going to drop the project entirely and just work on something new, like a different MVC game. So at the time, I was working with a template. It was an MVC1 style template, right? And I practiced with adding characters to templates. I took that knowledge of me adding Virgil to an MVC2 template that never got finished. I was like, okay, let me try to make new versions of these these Marvel characters, these MVC characters on this MVC1 template, but put my own spin on it. So essentially, what ended up happening was I I pretty much just added my own take on like MVC1, and that's what it was going to be. It was going to be like an MVC1 type of game. So I ended up just going through like essentially like a new version of the game, but that ended up essentially evolving into Marvel vs. Capcom 1.5, I guess you could say, like a proper like revamp um, of MVCX. You're not really gonna see it, like, cause there's really rarely any videos, but I did release my characters out there in the world so people could use them. But essentially, when I came back to MVCX, I pretty much redid it from the ground up. Um, I went back to Uno Tag because I figured, okay, I have a little bit better understanding of coding. Maybe I could just go into the files and try to edit some stuff in Uno Tag and see if that works. It worked for the most part, especially since it wasn't really too many problems because of the fact that I was pretty much making the characters. I was making the characters from the ground up for the most part. So Uno Tag, while it was doing its job, and it would be the tag system going forward, I still felt like at that time MVCX could be better. So I essentially got a new template, revamped it, and then redid Ryu entirely, and that was the very first trailer of MVCX 2.0. Like just right off the bat. At that point, the game will have went through its second revision, and that's pretty much where we are today, or going into today, where I would be rocking Uno Tag all the way until you came back.
Right.
So, if I remember correctly, um, before, like, when I was using Uno Tag and I was pretty much putting all my project was getting a lot of traction. A lot of people talked about it. Max Billion, he talked about it. Um, Dark Cipher Lucius, or DCL, or Space, he came out of the woodworks. He returned. And he was super interested in the project because it was just like, yo, this shit look fire, bro. Like, what is going on here? And I was like, yo, it's the guy. It's the guy. So, because when I was younger and I was just messing around with a lot of Mugen stuff, I looked at a lot of his characters. Believe it or not, bro, I actually used your MVC2 Chun Li in early MVCX, like in the
Yeah.
compilation. I used yours.
And to this day, a lot of people still use her.
I mean, she's a great Chun Li,
And
so
yeah, it's. I'm just surprised that a lot of people still use her. I mean, I think that Chun Li was specifically going to be for the original Eternity of Heroes project because for some weird reason, not a single person from Infinity Mugen team tackled Chun Li, except for maybe one, but he never got around to finishing her. So before that, I was trying to rush that character to get her into the project, but I ran out of time, so I just released her as a separate character.
Yeah, that explains a lot. That definitely explains a lot. I mean,
But
like,
she's a fun character to me still.
yeah, I think
I
she
actually
came out
still have
great
her.
for the time that she came out.
Yeah, she still plays great. I mean, she uses a Tatsunoko versus Capcom voice. She's she's really to this day I find her very fun to use. I know it's my character, but it's one that I'm actually proud of. One of my last creations before I left. That was one that I was really proud of.
Yeah, and you should be because like when I go back to some of my characters, I'm like, so like I cringe a bit, but anyways, like this is where we get into you because like if I remember you telling me, you pretty much came. MVCX is one of the things that inspired you to come back, and
It is one of the reasons I came back. One of the many reasons I'll say that, but the biggest reason I came back is because the original vision for Eternity of Heroes was so embedded into my head throughout those years that I just had to see my vision come to fruition somehow. because I knew what I wanted. It's just I wasn't sure how to execute it. And the thing is, I was gonna be completely alone on it because I have everything. I have all the files from the original EOH as well. Um, AC sent them to me via mail. He sent me everything, and I just held on to it. And to this day, I still got the disc. But this wasn't what I had in mind, and I just said no. I have to come up with something. And like I know this project is bigger than than it was supposed to be. And then I saw your project. I said, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it too. So I started going back to Mugen, making Mugen content, and then I released Proto Man. Proto Man was the first character I made coming back, and oh my goodness, Infinity Mugen Team kind of just blew up out of nowhere when they saw that character, because that was possibly the best iteration of Proto Man in Mugen that anybody has ever seen.
Yeah, he came out
And
wonderfully. Honestly, like it's one of the best like Mega Man characters I've ever seen in Mugen. Period.
yeah, yeah, and what I'm grateful for is Infinity Mugen Team did help me out because I noticed there was a couple of missing sprites, and I asked them, hey, think you can make these sprites? Like he's missing a few sprites. I just want to make sure he has what he needs. And they right away, they got me the sprites I needed, and I finished that character. Best Proto Man ever. I'm not just saying that because I created it or anything. I'm not saying that to be pride or as like a form of pride or anything. There's no other Proto Man that I know of that plays as good. That's the only reason why I'm saying it.
I respect that. Like it's honesty with yourself. Like you know what you made, and granted, like you said, like there was really no other Proto Man at that time that came out as good as yours did. You know,
Yeah,
and I'd imagine that after our talk and then after you working on Proto Man, that essentially inspired you to, you know, from what you told
make
me, I was mad. You know, I was mad. You know, so
yeah.
yeah, you
I
was
was
mad.
I was definitely mad. I was mad that there was no good Marvel style tag code still, because there was three tag codes. No, there's four tag codes that I know of. We already talked about two of them. The Uno tag, the Addo 04. Those are okay, but those are not really Marvel style.
No,
Those are like more SNK-ish type of tags. Then there's the one from Infinity called Trasgo. It's still available, but it's pretty bare bones. It just does like assists and such.
I didn't know
It
that.
works. Yeah, it works, but it wasn't what I was looking for. Then there's the Capcom Universe tag, which if you weren't making the characters for Capcom Universe, it wasn't gonna work.
Right.
That's the thing, and that's not what I was looking for either. That tag works, but you have to code it. You have to code your characters a certain way, and I don't like that. So I started studying Marvel 2 a lot, and I already knew a lot about Marvel 2 anyway, but I studied it like immensely. And and then I just started looking at how the tag works, what velocities to use, what each tag function does, how I can make it work, and just outlined a code to make to make like the first version of my tag, which didn't use any variables whatsoever, and that's why it was broken. Once I started realizing how this tag can work, and I had a lot of people test it, not just you. There was another group that also tested it, uh, and it was working, but it had some glaring issues that I had to fix, obviously. So now I made a brand new version, updating it from the variable list version. And this version has been possibly the most solid version of my tag code that I've ever done. Uh, Very rarely do I see it break, and whenever it does break, I have to find out what caused it to break so it doesn't break anymore. And and that's what you're using right now. So it's working just fine.
Yeah, essentially what DCL's new tackle did was it pushed every CX to new heights, heights that I never really thought was possible. It pretty much gave me almost everything that I could ever want in an MVC game. It gave me active switch, it gave me counter switch, it gave me a crossover assist, it gave me um it gave me raw tag or crossover tag, it gave me snapback, it gave me team aerial combo. Like it gave you almost everything that you could ever ask for in a tag system, and they were all at your disposal. So it was just like at this point, MVCX is like the future is looking bright, all because of this dude right here. So like if you're wondering how the tax system came out the way it did, think this dude right here. Like he pretty much helped put MVCX like much higher than it would have been if I just stayed on Uno tag. I kid you not.
You
So
give me too much. You give me too much credit,
like
bro.
I'm just being honest, bro. Like
But I will
like
say, the tag code came out beautifully. I had a lot of praise from old school Mugen creators, especially even on Mugen Guild as well. They thoroughly enjoyed how the tag code is looking. Um, I'm still sort of kind of stealthily updating it to make it even easier to add to any character, because my goal was to make this tag code 90% plug and play. And the only changes you have to do is just add a snippet of code to your hyper moves and a little bit of code to choosing your assists. That is it. A lot of the other stuff, just 90% plug and play. Just change what you need to change, and there you go. I did not want to make like a installer, quote unquote, because that honestly is too much work, and I don't want to deal with that. Manually put on the damn tag. Don't be lazy. I promise you, it's not even that hard.
it's really not. It came like I said, just it came out phenomenally. Like granted, a lot of things I named, like a good chunk of the things I named, like also didn't show up. Like for example, team aerial combo pretty much took that out the game. It's not an update, but you also added a crossover counter. That was also not in the game before, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
I added as much stuff as I could, because I wanted to make sure everything from classic Marvel was there. By classic Marvel, I'm talking about from X-Men versus Street Fighter to Marvel 2.
yeah,
But I also wanted to include something from Marvel 3 and Marvel Infinite. So you do have the option for Team Aerial combos. You do have the option for active switch. It's all there. You can enable it or disable it. It's literally up to you how you want to make this tag code function.
yeah, and like I said, like if it was for this tag code, MVCX wouldn't be as great as it is. Not even to my own horn, but it's just like it wouldn't have gotten to this level if it wasn't for your work. I'm just being honest. So
And I appreciate that though. I mean, it that's one of my missions was to make a damn good tag code, and I think I did that.
yeah, you definitely did. I'm not even gonna hold you. So, and at this point, are we satisfied with where it is, and is there going to be future updates to this tag code like that'll change it drastically?
aside from aside from making it easier to implement and fixing all the known bugs, I don't think there's any reason for me to update it. There was one thing that came to my mind that I thought would be fun to add, but honestly, it's the one feature I hated the most from classic Marvel, and that was the variable cross,
Right.
where both your characters come into the screen and just wreak mayhem. The thing is, Mugen already kind of does that with the Simo mode. So I just said, you know what? Nah, I don't want to add this.
Right.
This ain't for my tag code. I don't want to add something that could be kind of a little strange to add. I did not like the way I implemented it anyway, so I just completely removed it altogether.
Yeah, that will also add a little bit more of a mental stack than the tag code is already added. So
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't hard to add. I just didn't want to add it. That's the thing.
Yeah, like because you already have crossover combination in your game, so MVCX doesn't have
Yeah,
that, but it really doesn't need it.
yeah, crossover combinations there too. I mean, just choose what just choose what super your character's gonna throw out, and that's it. It should just work.
Yeah, and really that's really all we had to say about the tag system. Like I definitely think that like the game has come a long way from the early days of like Uno tag and all that weird garbage to like probably one of the greatest like playing MVC games, or two of the greatest playing MVC games like ever. Honestly, now it's just a matter of like where we go from here. So and honestly, like I said, thank Space for his work on it, because MVCX wouldn't be this. MVCX would probably be stuck in a hard place if it wasn't for his stuff. I'm just saying, like he helped out a lot more on this game than you guys realize. But like I said, like tag system in general has gone through a lot, and now it's like in the best place that it could possibly be. So, we got some questions from a couple of members in the Discord chat. It's Q&A time. We're gonna have this at the end of every podcast. So, first question is from Mac. He said, Black Widow versus Black Widow win. Nah, this is like nah. I think that's the okay. He said yeah, Marvel Black Widow and Capcom Black Widow. Isn't she from like Slam Masters or something like that?
I don't know.
I
I'm
got
not sure which Black Widow he's talking about.
yeah. I think that might be what he's talking about.
Might
Sec
be before my time.
yeah, it might be. Second is, what are your long term goals for MVCX? What made you take the step forward for development? Question is from marinara sauce. Pretty much my long term goal is to just make. It's pretty much to like do what MVCI tried to do but couldn't, and it's not like I'm throwing shade at MVCI, even though a good chunk of shade is warranted because I love the game. I still love the game. It's just that like MVCI had a vision. It knew they knew what they wanted to do, but they just didn't have the resources to do it. So I wanted to essentially like create the game MVCI could have been. That's pretty much what my long term goals are, and what pretty much inspired me to take the step forward, because I love MVCI's gameplay too much to just let it go to waste. I wanted to make an MVC game for everybody, honestly. MVC game for MVC2 heads, from MVC1 heads, X-Men vs. Street Fighter heads, like Marvel 3 heads, MVCI heads. I wanted to try to make a game for everybody.
Hey, wasn't MVCI also made by like the B team at Capcom?
It was made by like 10 people. It was made by 10 people. That's not enough team. That's not enough people to
Yeah,
work on a
that's not
fighting game.
enough.
Like if and honestly, like I said, if the game was sold for like $20-$25, people would have bought it. People would have bought it.
Yeah.
It's
If it wasn't, I'm pretty sure if it wasn't a full-on $60 game, people would have straight up ate it and bought that and played it.
right.
Sure.
They at that point they would have been like, okay, it's $20, so and it's a fun game. At some point we're gonna get Doctor Doom. I'm just saying, like if they sold it for 20, it wouldn't have been that bad. Not sure if anyone has asked this beforehand, but what are the chances we can organize some tournaments for MVCX? I really would like to get some tournaments started for the game. I really
What you
would.
been doing?
Yeah,
Haven't you
like
been doing that?
yeah, there was only ever one tournament organized for it, and that was hosted by Flynn Jux in the Frog Crew. It was called Fist Fights in a Movie, and there was a tournament that was being hosted for the game. He hosted it, and it came out really well. And there was some crazy stuff and some crazy bugs that happened for the game, but generally speaking, I think it came out really well. So, as for the chances of future tournaments, it's very likely. I actually, one of my testers, his name is Tech Chase. He's brought up the idea of, once this balance patch comes out, this new balance patch, of hosting some bi-weekly tournaments. And I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm definitely down for that. So yeah, like there's going to be tournaments in the near future, hopefully. So It's just really a matter of like getting them hosted and shit like that. And I definitely think it would be a really fun experience, and it'll also allow us to find out if anything is wrong in the game. So it was, and on top of that, like, because I like to also not just view the game as a developer, but as a player, because I do play MVCI a lot. Like, I am a Ryu main. I got top 5 at an online tournament recently with Ryu Iron Man, and I also play Black. I play a lot of characters, so, but I understand MVC at a somewhat fundamental level, to the point where it's just like I don't try to view it as a developer, but I also try to view it as a player. So um, hosting the tournaments and watching the tournaments, cool. Playing in the tournaments, I might. I might. No promises though. Because developers never know how their game's gonna play. But yes, we could organize some tournaments in the future. That's something I do have in mind. This might be a silly question, but what is your general process / criteria for deciding which characters to include in the game and how to design them? Question is by Natsu. That is not a silly question. That is a wonderful question.
I
Um,
think I think we can both answer that.
yeah, we both can answer
Right.
that one. We can both answer that one. I'll let you go first because you're working
All
on
right.
your own project.
Right. Well, all right. So my general process is, who do I want to see in a Marvel game that I haven't seen yet? That's what I ask myself first.
Right.
And for building my project, I kind of outlined what characters to work on first, to mainly test out the features that I want to add in the game. Like, for example, if I make these changes, will this character work? Will super armor work? Will flight characters work this way? I already have like 2 or 3 flight characters in my game. Uh, a classic character, if I change his gameplay to to the newer, more modern gameplay, that includes like wall bounce, ground bounce, all that stuff. Well, he still feel like a good character. All that goes through my mind first, kind of like in a blender or something, and then after brainstorming all of that, I come up with an idea for any character that I'm gonna make and how they're gonna play. That way, that way each character plays differently and unique. Yeah, there's gonna be some characters that are gonna, feel like they're clones or something, but that's normal. A lot of games are like that, but they will have differences. But um, I'm talking, how can I make each character as unique as possible, and so they can have their own combo routes as well.
Right.
All that goes through my mind. So, uh, my latest one was Black Cat,
Yeah.
which was that one was an unexpected choice. I'm not gonna lie, and yeah, she's a Spider-Man character. She's gonna swing around like Spider-Man does, but what can I do to make her different? Okay, she's obviously a cat, so she's gonna have some type of cat scratches. Uh, and I started brainstorming. Okay, she has her hook. What can I do that no one else has ever done, so she can use her hook line in combat? See the trailer for yourself, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Because I've never done anything like this before, and honestly, that character was really really fun to work on.
Yeah, I think she came out really well too. And yeah, it's pretty much what he said. I ain't gonna lie. Like, when it came to including characters in MVCX, right? Like, let's go back to 2.0. Let's go back to early 2.0. When it came to including characters in MVCX, obviously the first one I worked on was Ryu, because he's always like the primer. He's always the one that gives you like an idea as to how the game would play. But then I chose Gambit after. Now, why didn't I choose Wolverine? Well, mainly because of the fact that I really wanted to see Gambit. I was like, well, how would Gambit have played if he was in MVCI? How would he have played? So that's pretty much a big reason why. Like, it's pretty much how I approach characters. It's like, how would they have played in MVCI, generally speaking, and it and that was a big reason why I picked Gambit. and after that I picked Drill or Jill. I said Drill. I picked Jill, but she was RE3 Jill. But a lot of those things kind of carried over to like, you know, classic Jill, which who would eventually replace her later. So, but each character provided like new aspects of the game that wasn't present before. Like Jill, she introduced like helpers and summoning and all that stuff, as well as using a crap ton of projectiles and stuff that um I eventually carried over to some like a lot of my other characters. Iron Fist, I also worked on Iron Fist. He was the fourth character. He carried over super armor. He was the first armored character to actually show up in the game. So now armor isn't a big part of his playstyle, but it is in one of his moves, and it gave me a little bit of an idea as to how his super armor would work. And then a lot of that knowledge would kind of be carried over to every other character in terms of implementing super armor. So it's pretty much almost the exact same approach that DCL does when it comes to adding his characters. It's also like how they have played in MVCI, or how they have played in like a modern atmosphere, how and what unique gameplay designs that I haven't worked on before, what they bring to the roster, or what unique gameplay designs could they have to make them stick out. I like to present it as somewhat of a challenge when it comes to working on those characters. So generally, it's like it's honestly so in depth that that's going to have to be a topic for another podcast, because another thing I'm going to be doing is like I'm not going to be touching on just the system mechanics. I'm also going to be touching on podcasts for characters, and there'll be 3 characters in each podcast I'll be touching on. Pause. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. So, but generally, I think this went really well. I really enjoyed having this conversation, especially considering the fact that we're talking about how far MVCX has gone and the future of the game, as well as the future of Eternity of Heroes, because I would like to have a separate podcast for Eternity of Heroes, honestly, because that game is looking to be great. I'm not gonna lie, it's looking to be better than MVCX. Like that's just from the outside of looking in.
I'll say this about my project. Um, when I revitalized that project, I did expect, and I'm not gonna lie, I did expect some some backlash and smack talk, because the original Eternity of Heroes did was not that good
It was
whatsoever.
not.
It was pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. Uh, but I will say they did try their best, but it looks like they kind of rushed a lot of things, and I kind of made it my mission to make it into something that I envisioned, and remake the entire game from the ground up. Different characters, not just throwing in whatever characters I want. Uh, and well, actually, I do sometimes throw whatever characters I want, but I actually put so much effort into making the characters because I need them to play a certain way, or I'm not going to be satisfied. Um, these characters, I don't just throw a bunch of code. I look at every section of the code as deep as I can. I make sure whether something will break or not, like projectiles, helpers, the timing of the supers, uh, all that goes through my mind. I mean, I every now and then I go frame by frame whenever I make any move, any attack, any super move, any special move. I sometimes go frame by frame to make sure. All right, is this correct? Why is this happening on this frame? All that stuff. I do my best to minimize any bugs, because uh, what I want to see is people enjoying the game. Bugs, I'll fix those whenever I can get to them, because I don't want to work on just fixing bugs only.
Yeah, that's honestly a really good way of approaching things. It really is. I'm gonna have to take some cues because I don't be looking that deep into it, but like I should. But Hey, that's what we got testers for. We test.
Right.
You got to test shit and make sure it works. But
Yeah, I spent a lot of time testing the characters, so I take a really really long time making one character work the way I want them to because I just want them to play correctly. Sure, like there might be some issues, but I don't want them to be glaring issues.
exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Well, that is the end of the podcast. If you guys enjoyed it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The podcast will be available first to my Patreon members. And it'll come out later on YouTube like every 2 weeks. So, and yeah, thank you to Space for joining me. There's going to be new co-hosts almost every time we do these. Like, it'll be some of the same ones, but it'll also be new ones too. So, but thanks for stopping by, and thanks for checking it out. And I'm gonna see you guys next time.